He was called a tyrant by some, a hero by others. To many across Africa, he was the man who dared to stand against the West, Muammar Gaddafi, the revolutionary who dreamed of a united Africa under one flag, one currency, and one destiny. But like every man who challenged the powers of the world, his story ended not in glory, but in blood and betrayal. In 1969, a 27-year-old military officer led a quiet coup in Libya, toppling the monarchy of King Idris without a single shot fired. The young Gaddafi promised freedom, equality, and a new dawn for his people. He was charismatic, a man of vision, speaking not just for Libya, but for all of Africa and the Arab world. He called it the Great Al-Fateh Revolution, the opening. To his followers, he wasn't just a leader, he was a symbol of strength against foreign domination. Gaddafi nationalized Libya's vast oil reserves, taking control from Western corporations and pouring the wealth into education, healthcare, and infrastructure. In a matter of years, Libya transformed from one of the poorest nations in Africa into one of the richest. Homes, schools, and hospitals were built. Libyans received free education and medical care. He abolished rent, and for many years, the country had no external debt. He dreamed of something greater, a single African nation powered by its own resources. He called for an African gold-backed currency, one that would free Africa from dependence on the US dollar and European banks. It was a dream that terrified global powers because if Africa united economically, it would be unstoppable, but power rarely comes without shadows. As the years passed, Gaddafi's rule grew increasingly absolute. He silenced opposition, controlled the media, and ruled with an iron hand. While some saw stability, others saw fear. Internationally, he became known as a sponsor of revolution and terror, accused of funding militant groups and linked to the 1988 Lockerbie bombing. Charges he denied. In 1986, the United States bombed Tripoli and Benghazi in retaliation. His adopted daughter was killed in the strike. From that day, his hatred for Western powers deepened. He survived, but something changed. The revolutionary became the fortress. By the early 2000s, the world began to change again. Gaddafi sought reconciliation with the West. He dismantled his nuclear program, paid reparations for Lockerbie, and shook hands with the very leaders who once sought his death. For a moment, Libya re-entered the global stage, but beneath the surface, the old tensions remained. In 2011, the Arab Spring swept through North Africa, Tunisia, Egypt, and beyond. Voices rose in Libya, demanding change. What began as protests quickly spiraled into chaos. Rebel forces, supported by NATO airstrikes, turned the revolution against him. Cities that once cheered his name now burned with anger and war. The world watched as the empire he built crumbled city by city. NATO jets darkened Libyan skies, and Western nations armed the rebels. Gaddafi vowed never to flee, declaring, "I will die a martyr in my land." And so he did. In October 2011, in his hometown of Sirte, Gaddafi was captured and killed by rebel fighters. The man who ruled Libya for 42 years, the man who once dreamed of African unity, lay lifeless in the desert sand. His final words were said to be, "What did I do to you?" But his death did not bring peace. Instead, Libya descended into civil war. Rival factions, militias, and foreign powers fighting for control. The country that was once stable and wealthy now struggled with chaos, poverty, and division. Some say Gaddafi's greatest flaw was that he tried to build an empire of ideas in a world that only understands power. Yet, even in death, his vision refuses to die. Across Africa, his dream of a united continent still inspires leaders and movements who believe Africa can rise on its own terms. Some remember him as a dictator, others as the last African leader who truly believed in Africa's independence. Love him or hate him, Muammar Gaddafi remains one of the most complex figures in modern history. A man who rose from the desert with nothing but conviction and will, and who dared to stand against the world's mightiest powers. In the end, his story is not just Libya's story. It is the story of how ideals rise, how power corrupts, and how destiny devours those who challenge the world order. The world may forget his name in time, but the echo of his dream of African unity, of independence, of freedom still whispers across the sands of the Sahara.